Mark loved the outdoors. Trails, trees, and fresh air always called to him. Today was no different. He'd found a new trail, one less traveled, and set off with a hop in his step. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, painting the path in shifting light. Birds chirped. A squirrel darted across the trail. Mark smiled. This was the life. He pulled out his phone, snapping pictures. No signal. He shrugged, tucking it away. The beauty around him was enough. Hours melted away. The sun dipped lower in the sky. Time to head back, Mark thought, finally turning around. The woods looked different now. Shadows stretched, twisting familiar shapes into lurking monsters. Doubt crept in. Had he taken a wrong turn? Panic welled as darkness deepened. The once friendly woods now pressed in, suffocating him. Every rustle of leaves sounded like footsteps, every snapping twig a predator approaching. He pulled out his phone again, desperate for a signal. Still nothing. Battery? 20%. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around his chest. He was lost. Stumbling through the darkness, he clung to hope. There had to be a way out. Then through the trees a faint light flickered. A cabin! Relief washed over him. He wasn't alone. The cabin, though dilapidated, promised shelter. Mark approached cautiously, his heart pounding. The wooden door creaked open on rusty hinges. Dust motes danced in the single beam of moonlight slicing through a boarded-up window. The air hung heavy, thick with the silence of ages. He stepped inside. The musty smell of decay filled his nostrils. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than the terror of the woods. Exhaustion, finally, overtook fear. He slumped against a wall, too tired to care about the unsettling atmosphere. Sleep came quickly, a dark, dreamless abyss. He woke with a gasp. Moonlight flooded the cabin, but something was different. His blood ran cold. Eyes. He was surrounded by eyes. They stared at him from the walls, dozens of them, boring into his very soul. Portraits. The cabin was filled with portraits of people, their eyes following his every move. He scrambled to his feet, heart hammering against his ribs. Each portrait seemed to mock his fear, the painted faces twisted into grotesque smiles. The eyes, so lifelike, seemed to pulsate in the darkness. He couldn't tear his gaze away. Who were these people, and why were their eyes all fixed on him? As dawn broke, a sliver of pale light pierced through the cracks in the boarded-up window. The eyes in the portraits seemed to dim, their intensity fading with the approaching day. He stumbled towards the window, desperate to escape the suffocating gaze of the portraits. He had to see what was outside, to understand. With trembling hands, he ripped away the rotting wood, creating a gaping hole in the wall. Light flooded in, revealing the truth behind the portraits. They weren't portraits, they were windows. Windows looking into other cabins, identical cabins stretching as far as he could see. And in each window, a face, pale and gaunt, stared back at him. Terror, raw and consuming, seized him. He wasn't alone, he was surrounded. Those faces, those eyes reflected his own fear, his own desperate hope for escape. He had stumbled into something sinister, something ancient and evil. And now, he was a part of it. The faces in the windows pressed closer, their expressions hungry, their eyes burning with an unholy light. He was trapped, with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. As the first rays of sunlight touched his face, he screamed. A primal scream that echoed through the silent woods, a desperate plea lost in the vastness of the wilderness. He would never hike alone again.